An Earth mercenary meets a kidnapped, brainwashed alien girl with a special genetic trait. What drives them to fight dark forces together? The sun was setting over the barren landscape of Zilthar 9, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks and dusty plains. Arden Voss stood at the edge of a cliff, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. His mission was simple: protect the crew of the research vessel, a team of scientists and explorers who had ventured to this distant, desolate planet to study its strange ecosystems. But as always, things never went according to plan. The crew was being attacked. A rogue faction of space pirates had caught wind of the vessel's location and launched a surprise assault. They descended from the sky in sleek black ships, their weapons blazing with energy, blasts that lit up the sky like a storm. Arden, a seasoned mercenary with a reputation for getting the job done, had been hired to safeguard the crew. He didn't care about their scientific endeavors. His job was to keep them alive. "Take cover!" Arden shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. His hand gripped his blaster tightly as he scanned the area for targets. The crew scrambled for shelter, ducking behind rocks and scattered debris. Arden moved quickly, his combat boots pounding against the rocky ground as he took out two of the pirates with precise shots. The pirates returned fire, but Arden's training kicked in, and he ducked behind a large boulder, taking cover. As the gunfire rang out around him, he heard a scream, a woman's voice, desperate and full of terror. Arden's eyes narrowed. He knew that sound all too well. "Shit," he muttered under his breath. He sprinted toward the source of the scream, his weapon raised. He rounded a corner of a craggy rock formation and saw her, an alien woman, her dark skin almost blending into the shadows of the rocks. She was struggling, bound by thick metallic chains, her face twisted in pain as one of the pirates held her roughly by the arm. She looked to be in her early 20s with striking features, bright blue eyes that shimmered even in the dim light, and long black hair that cascaded down her back. "Let her go!" Arden barked, his blaster aimed at the pirate. The pirate sneered, not releasing his hold on the woman. "You want her? Come and take her, mercenary!" He taunted, tightening his grip on the alien woman's arm. Without another word, Arden fired. The shot hit the pirate square in the chest, and he dropped to the ground with a lifeless thud. The woman fell to her knees, her chains clinking as she collapsed. "Are you all right?" Arden asked, kneeling beside her. His eyes flicked to the horizon. The battle was still raging, and they had no time to waste. The woman blinked up at him, her blue eyes wide with fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a raspy cough escaped. Arden helped her to her feet, supporting her as she wavered. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. I'm Kaya," she rasped, still trying to catch her breath. "Please, you have to help me. They were going to take me to the station." Arden's brow furrowed. "The station? What are you talking about?" Kaya's gaze flickered, and for a moment there was a look of panic in her eyes. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. "The Corva station, they were going to sell me there. As a slave." Arden's stomach tightened. He had heard rumors of such places, black market trade stations where beings of all races were bought and sold as property. But he had never imagined he would be involved in something like this. "I'll protect you," Arden said firmly, his voice resolute. "No one's going to take you to that station. We're getting out of here." He turned to head back to the crew, but Kaya's hands shot out, gripping his arm tightly. "Wait," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not just after me. They want what's inside me." Arden's gaze snapped back to her, his pulse quickening. "What do you mean, what's inside you?" Kaya hesitated, her expression haunted. "I don't know exactly, but my genes are different. They've been studying me. I think they want to use me for something terrible." Arden frowned. He had been hired to protect the crew, not get involved in whatever dark secrets this woman was hiding. But something in Kaya's eyes told him that whatever this was, it was bigger than any job he had ever taken. "We need to get you to safety," he said, his voice grim, "and then we'll figure out what's going on." Together they made their way back to the research vessel, dodging blasts and navigating through the ongoing skirmish. Arden could feel the weight of what Kaya had said pressing on him, but there was no time to dwell on it now. The pirates were still closing in, and they had to escape before the situation worsened. Once inside the ship, Arden activated the emergency lockdown, sealing the doors behind them. The crew was already on high alert, but they had managed to avoid the worst of the fighting. "We're not out of the woods yet," Arden muttered as he took a seat near the control panel. "We need to get this ship off the ground and into orbit fast." Kaya was still standing near the entrance, her eyes darting nervously as she glanced at the crew. She looked lost, confused, and frightened. Arden stood up and walked over to her, his voice low. "Hey," he said, "you're safe now. We'll figure this out. I'll protect you." Kaya didn't say anything at first. She just looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and something else, something deeper. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, unsure of how to put her thoughts into words. Finally, she spoke in a soft, trembling voice. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Arden gave her a reassuring nod, though he wasn't sure himself. He was a soldier, not a hero, but something about Kaya stirred a protective instinct deep inside him. He couldn't let her fall into the hands of the pirates, or anyone else for that matter. "We'll get you somewhere safe." He promised, though, in the back of his mind he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. The research vessel's engines roared to life, and they lifted off the planet's surface, leaving the chaos behind them. But as they soared into the dark expanse of space, Arden couldn't help but wonder what Kaya's connection was to the strange power that the pirates had been after. What was she hiding, and why did she seem so important? His questions would have to wait. For now they were safe. But Arden had a feeling that things were about to get much more complicated. The ship hummed softly as it ascended into the void of space, leaving the desolate planet Zilthar 9 behind. Arden kept a steady hand on the controls, eyes focused on the course ahead, but his mind was elsewhere. Kaya sat in the cockpit next to him, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of stars outside the viewport. She had been silent for most of the journey, her thoughts seemingly far away. Arden glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to tell me, Kaya," he said quietly. "But I need to know. Whatever they're after, whatever's inside you, we need to understand it." Kaya turned to him slowly, her blue eyes reflecting the starlight. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to explain it," she said, her voice trembling. It's in my blood, my genes. I was born with something different." Arden didn't say anything, just kept his gaze on her. He knew there was more to this than she had told him so far. Kaya was hiding something, something powerful, and Arden had the distinct feeling that it wasn't just her life that was in danger now. It was something much larger. Kaya took a deep breath and continued. "I don't know exactly when it started. It's been with me my whole life, but it wasn't until recently that I realized what it really meant. My genes, they're unique." Arden leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. "Unique how?" Kaya looked down at her hands as if trying to understand the words she was about to say. "My DNA is not like anyone else's. It's been altered somehow. I can heal faster than any human or alien. I can recover from injuries almost instantly." She looked up at him, then her eyes full of sorrow. "But it's not just physical. There's something else. A power inside me. I can feel it. Sometimes it's like it's waiting to be unleashed." Arden's mind raced. "What kind of power? What are you talking about?" "I don't know," Kaya admitted, her voice barely audible. "But I know that whatever it is, it's dangerous. And there are people who will do anything to get their hands on me, on what I have." Arden stayed silent for a long moment, letting her words sink in. The stakes were higher than he had realized. He had been hired to protect a woman, but now it seemed like he was protecting the key to something much bigger. Something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "We'll figure this out," Arden said finally, his voice steady. "But first we need to get you to a safe place. We can't afford to let them get to you." Kaya nodded, but there was still a look of uncertainty in her eyes. She wasn't sure what she was running from, but she knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The ship continued its journey through space, the stars stretching out before them like an endless ocean. Kaya found herself lost in thought again, her mind drifting back to her past. Days later, after a long journey through the stars, Arden and Kaya arrived at an old isolated station, one that wasn't marked on any of the official star maps. It was a research facility far from the prying eyes of the galactic powers. Arden had arranged for them to lay low here, at least for a while. The station was quiet, surrounded by the cold void of space. It felt empty, isolated, but it was secure, and that was all that mattered. As they made their way through the facility, Kaya couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This place, though quiet, felt too sterile, too detached from the world outside. Arden led her to a small lab where they could lay low and begin to figure out what to do next. "Here," Arden said as they entered the room. "We can stay here for now. We'll figure out our next move once we've had some time to think." Kaya nodded but didn't respond right away. She took a seat at one of the terminals, her fingers resting lightly on the control panel. She stared at the screen, but her mind was far away. The truth about her origins still haunted her, and she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread. What had her creators wanted from her, and why had they tried to hide the truth from her? "Do you want to talk about it?" Arden's voice broke through her thoughts. Kaya turned to him slowly, her eyes clouded with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can," she said softly. It's hard to explain. I don't even know what it all means. I was raised by the people who created me, but I wasn't always told everything. They wanted to make me something more than I was, something powerful." She paused, her gaze flicking to the terminal in front of her. "I was just a test subject. They experimented on me, changed my DNA, tried to make me stronger, faster, better. But I don't know if they ever knew what they were really creating." Arden frowned, the weight of her words settling heavily on him. "So your genetic enhancements, they were intentional?" "Yes," Kaya whispered, "but I don't know what they were hoping to achieve. I was supposed to be a weapon, something to be used, but somewhere along the way they lost control of me. They didn't know what they had anymore, and that's when they decided to lock me away, keep me hidden." She stood up suddenly, pacing the small lab. "I don't know why they wanted to do this to me, why they wanted to turn me into something I wasn't. All I wanted was to live a normal life, but they turned me into this, something I can't even control." Arden stood and walked over to her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together, Kaya. We'll find out who did this to you and why. But you're not a weapon. You're a person." Kaya closed her eyes, taking in a shaky breath. "I hope you're right," she said softly. They stood in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation hanging heavy in the air. Kaya didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she wasn't going to let anyone use her again. Not without a fight. Kaya had become a target quickly. Her genetic makeup, discovered by the scientific organizations across the galaxy, was too valuable to ignore. These organizations had learned of her unique ability to heal at an accelerated rate and her physical attributes, which made her an unparalleled specimen. They were willing to do anything to possess her genes, believing they could create an army of unstoppable soldiers. These organizations, spanning multiple galaxies, had one goal in mind: to modify the genetic structure of other beings using Kaya's unique genes. The idea was to create soldiers who were stronger, faster, and capable of healing from injuries in mere moments. "I never asked for this," Kaya whispered to herself as she looked out the window. "I'm not a weapon." Arden, who had been silently watching her, spoke up. "They don't see you as a person, Kaya. To them, you're a tool to control and dominate." Kaya turned her head to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger. "Why me, Arden? Why are they after me?" "Because of what you carry inside you," Arden said quietly, stepping closer. "You have a power they can't ignore. You're not just an ordinary being, Kaya. Your genes hold the key to something far greater, something that could change the fate of many worlds." Kaya felt her stomach churn. "I don't want to be a part of their plans," she said. "I don't want to become their experiment." "You won't be," Arden reassured her, his voice firm. "I won't let them use you like that. I'll protect you no matter what." Kaya looked at him, her heart aching. She had never felt so vulnerable before. But there was something about Arden's words that gave her hope. "But how do we stop them? They've already sent out their agents. They'll find us, Arden. It's only a matter of time." "We'll outsmart them," Arden said with a grim smile. "We'll hide in plain sight. We'll find people who can help us." Kaya felt the weight of the situation crash down on her. Her life had changed in a matter of hours, and now she was being forced to run, hide, and fight back against those who would do anything to take her genetic secrets. "How long can we keep running?" she asked, her voice a little tremulous. How long until they catch up with us? As long as it takes, Arden said, his expression fierce. We'll keep moving, we'll find safe havens, and we'll fight back when the time comes. Kaya nodded, although doubt still clouded her thoughts. She wasn't sure how long they could outrun their enemies. But one thing was certain, she couldn't let them capture her. Not while she still had a chance to fight. Days turned into weeks as Arden and Kaya continued their journey. They encountered several threats, evaded agents sent to capture Kaya and move from one hideout to another. But the looming threat of the organizations hunting her never disappeared. One evening, as they lay low in a remote station, Kaya turned to Arden. What if they catch up with us, Arden? What if we can't stop them? Arden sat up, his face resolute. Then we'll make sure they know that they've made a terrible mistake. You're not just some lab experiment. You're the future, and they're not going to get away with it. Kaya smiled slightly, feeling a little more hopeful than before. I'm glad you're with me, Arden. I don't think I could do this alone. You won't have to, Arden said, his voice steady. We're in this together, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. As they looked out over the vast expanse of space, both of them knew that the war they were about to enter would be far from easy, but with each other they would face whatever dangers lay ahead. The cargo hold was dimly lit, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the metal walls. Arden paced back and forth, his heavy boots echoing in the quiet, broken only by the occasional sound of the ship's automated systems. He had spent the better part of the last few hours processing the encounter with Kaya, and though his instincts told him to act with haste, something in the back of his mind kept him rooted to the spot. He was a soldier first and foremost, trained to think and plan before acting. When he first saw her, she was just another captive in a galaxy full of them. Yet there was something about her, the way she held herself, the fire in her eyes, the silent strength that seemed to radiate from her despite her situation. It was a strength Arden could recognize. But it wasn't just that. She had something that none of them had, something more. He'd seen the way her wounds healed themselves, the strange, almost unnatural energy that surrounded her when she focused. It wasn't just a random accident. His mind wandered back to his own experiences. His life had been one of constant struggle, surviving in the harshest environments, fighting in the deadliest wars. But what had it all been for power survival? He couldn't quite place it, but there was something deeper, something more meaningful that kept him going. And now with Kaya, he felt the pull of that same sense of purpose. The more he learned about her, the more he realized that she wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. She could be the key. Why do you want to protect me? Kaya's voice broke through his thoughts, soft but unwavering. She stood just a few paces away, her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that matched his own. It was the first time she had spoken directly to him since their encounter, and though her voice was steady, there was a hint of vulnerability beneath it. Arden turned to face her, his brow furrowing slightly. He had been avoiding the question himself, not fully understanding his own motivations. But now that she had asked, he had no choice but to confront it. I don't know, he said after a long pause. I'm not the type to just do something out of the goodness of my heart. It's more than that. There's something about you, something I don't fully understand. But I know one thing for sure, you're not just another victim of circumstance. There's power in you, power that could change everything. Kaya looked at him for a long moment, her gaze softening. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this power. I never asked for any of this. I get that, Arden said, his voice gentler now. But you don't have to figure it out alone. You don't have to let them use you for their experiments. We can fight back. We can make sure no one else suffers the way you have. She shook her head slightly, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders. I'm not a hero. I don't even know what I am anymore. Oh. You're more than you think, Arden said, his tone firm but kind. You're the future, and I'm not going to let them take that from you. Kaya hesitated, and then almost imperceptibly she nodded. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Perhaps it was hope, or perhaps just the realization that she wasn't entirely alone in this fight. All right, she said quietly. I'll trust you, but we need a plan, and we need to move fast. They won't stop coming for me. Arden nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. We'll figure it out, together. For the first time since meeting her, Arden felt a sense of purpose that went beyond the paycheck. This was bigger than anything he had ever been a part of. This wasn't just about saving one person, it was about standing up for something greater, and he wasn't going to let her down. They sat together in silence for a moment, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The weight of what was to come hung heavy in the air, but there was also something else, a glimmer of hope, however small it might have been. At that moment, Arden realized something. He wasn't just protecting Kaya because it was the right thing to do. He was protecting her because she represented something more. She represented a chance to make a difference in a universe that had long since lost its way. "Let's get to work," Arden said, standing up and moving toward the control panel. "We've got a lot to do." Kaya followed him, her steps steady but measured. She had agreed to trust him, and now it was time to take the next step. Together they would figure out how to escape, how to fight back, and how to make sure that no one else suffered the way she had. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrating through the walls of the small craft. Arden gripped the controls, his knuckles white, as he steered them through the narrow corridors of the space station. Kaya sat beside him, her face tense, eyes darting nervously as they shot out into the cold void of space. "We're not safe yet," Arden muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the radar for any signs of pursuit. The tension in his voice was palpable. He knew that leaving the station wasn't enough. The real danger was still out there hunting them. Kaya's gaze lingered on the viewport, watching the stars drift by in the distance. She was silent for a moment, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what had just happened. "Do you think we can make it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Arden didn't answer immediately. He focused on the controls, his mind racing. The space station was still within range, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. "We have no choice but to try," he finally said. "If we don't, we'll never make it." The ship continued to speed through the darkness of space, the hum of the engines the only sound between them. Kaya felt the weight of the silence, the uncertainty of their future pressing down on her. She turned to Arden, her eyes filled with questions she didn't know how to ask. "Arden," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "what happens if they catch us?" He glanced at her, his face hardening. "Then we fight, or we die trying." Kaya nodded, though a part of her still didn't want to believe what he had said. The journey ahead was filled with uncertainty, and every second felt like a countdown to something inevitable. They couldn't afford to stop, not even for a moment. Hours passed. The stars outside the viewport blurred as they traveled faster, deeper into the unknown reaches of space. Arden kept his focus on the ship's controls, every muscle in his body tense. He could feel the weight of Kaya's gaze on him, but he didn't look at her. He couldn't. "We're approaching the asteroid field," Arden said, his voice tense. "Hold on tight. This is going to get rough." Kaya's breath caught in her throat as she braced herself for the turbulence. She could see the rocky field looming ahead, a mass of jagged rocks floating in the emptiness. She clenched her fists, heart pounding. "Are you sure this is the only way?" "It's the fastest way out," Arden replied, eyes scanning the field. "If we try to take the longer route, they'll catch us before we get anywhere." The ship rocked violently as they entered the asteroid field, debris crashing against the hull. Kaya's stomach lurched as they weaved through the rocks, the ship's hull creaking under the pressure. Arden steered the ship with precision, narrowly avoiding several larger asteroids. "This isn't just a chase," Kaya said, her voice strained. "They're going to kill us if they catch us." "I know," Arden replied, his jaw clenched. "But we're not going to let that happen." The ship jolted again, and Kaya grabbed onto the armrest, her knuckles white from the force. They were in the thick of it now, and there was no turning back. The asteroid field stretched out before them, a deadly labyrinth. Kaya swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. "Do you think we can outrun them?" "We have to," Arden said, his tone hardening with determination. "We don't have a choice." The ship swerved sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding an asteroid. Arden's grip tightened on the controls, his concentration absolute. "We'll make it," he said, more to himself than to Kaya. "We have to." The ship lurched to one side as they navigated through the dense nebula, the stars around them swirling into a chaotic pattern. Kaya gripped the edge of her seat, feeling the pull of gravity shift as the ship's engines fought to maintain control. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the journey pressing down on them. "We'll be entering the uncharted sector soon," Arden's voice echoed through the ship's speakers, his tone steady. Once we get there, we can regroup and make a proper plan. Kaya sat silently, her thoughts racing. The events of the past few days had been overwhelming, being captured, escaping, and now running for their lives. It was all so much to process. But it wasn't just the external chaos that weighed on her. It was something else, something deep inside her. She could feel it, her body was changing. Her body had always been strong, but now it was something more. She could feel the subtle hum of energy in her veins, a pulse that seemed to react to her emotions, to her thoughts. It was as if something inside her was awakening something that had been dormant for a long time. Arden, she said slowly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I feel something inside me, something I can't explain. Arden glanced at her, his expression hard to read. What do you mean? Kaya closed her eyes, trying to focus on the sensation. It's like my body is reacting to something, a force I can't control. Arden's brows furrowed as he looked at her more intently. Do you think it's your power? I don't know, Kaya admitted, her voice soft. I've never felt anything like this before. There was a long silence as Arden mulled over her words. You've been through a lot, he said finally. Maybe this is your body's way of reacting to the stress, the trauma. Kaya nodded but wasn't convinced. It's more than that. It feels different, like I could do something I'm not sure I'm ready for. Arden watched her carefully. You need to understand your abilities. We don't know how powerful you are yet, but if we're going to survive, we need to figure it out. Kaya felt a knot tighten in her chest. But what if I can't control it? What if I hurt someone? You'll learn to control it, Arden said firmly. We'll work together. I'll help you. Thank you, Kaya whispered, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. As the hours passed, Kaya continued to experiment with her abilities. She focused on small, controlled movements, at first like healing a minor scratch on her arm. The familiar warmth spread through her fingertips, and to her amazement, the wound began to close. But this time it was different. She could feel the energy radiating from her, not just healing the wound, but strengthening the tissue. I can feel it, she murmured, watching in awe. It's like I'm changing. Arden turned to look at her, his eyes narrowing with concern. What do you mean by that? It's like my body is becoming stronger, more resilient, Kaya explained, her voice filled with wonder. But it's not just that. I feel different, more in control. This could be the beginning of something huge, Arden said, his tone thoughtful. We need to keep this under control, though. We don't know the full extent of your abilities yet. Kaya nodded, her expression thoughtful. I'm going to figure this out, for both of us. The ship continued its journey through the stars, but Kaya no longer felt as helpless as before. For the first time, she felt as if she could fight back. The small ship floated in the empty void of space, drifting silently among the stars. Kaya leaned against the wall, her eyes closed, trying to center herself. The weight of their situation had been sinking in more and more with each passing hour. It wasn't just about survival anymore. They were running from something far more dangerous. Arden, do you think we can outrun them? Kaya asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Arden glanced at her, his face grim. We have no choice. If we don't keep moving, we'll be caught. We can't let that happen. There was a long silence between them, both of them, knowing the truth but unwilling to speak it out loud. It was the same truth that haunted Kaya's every thought. The people who were chasing her weren't just after her. They were after what she could do. I just wish I could do more, Kaya said quietly, almost to herself. I feel like I'm just waiting to be used like a tool. Arden turned to her, his gaze softening. You're not just a tool, Kaya. You're much more than that. We'll find a way to use your power to our advantage. But first, we need to survive. Just then, the communication system crackled to life. A familiar voice came through the speakers, breaking the tension. Arden, Kaya, it's Zira. I need to talk to you both. Arden's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly moved to the communication panel. Zira, what's going on? I have information. Zira's voice crackled through. You're not alone in this fight. There are others who want to help, but we need to act fast. Gorth is already mobilizing his forces. Kaya's eyes narrowed in confusion. Who else? What's your plan? Zira's voice became more urgent. There's a group of rebels people who want to see Gorth fall. They've been watching Gorth's movements for a long time, but they don't trust just anyone. They want to make sure you're really who they think you are. What do they want from me? Kaya asked, her heart pounding in her chest. They want to test you, see what you can do, Zira replied, but they can't make a move until we have more information. I'll be meeting with them soon. I'll fill you in on the details, but for now you need to stay low. Gorth has spies everywhere. Understood, Arden said, his tone steady. Keep us posted. We'll be ready. The communication ended, and Arden turned to Kaya. We have a chance. We just have to stay one step ahead of Gorth. Kaya nodded, but there was still doubt in her eyes. What if it's a trap? Arden paused for a moment before answering. Then we deal with it, but we need to take the risk if we're going to stop Gorth. As the hours passed, they prepared for their next move. Kaya felt a sense of unease settle in her stomach, but she knew that they couldn't afford to hesitate. The stakes were too high, and the longer they waited, the more dangerous it would become. We'll get through this, Kaya said, more to herself than to Arden. We have to. Arden gave her a reassuring smile. We will. Together. As they approached the meeting point, tension hung in the air. Kaya knew that this could be the turning point they needed, but she also knew the risks involved. There were no guarantees, no promises. All they had was each other and the hope that they could stop Gorath before it was too late. The grand halls of the Harkon Empire were filled with the low hum of machinery and the distant murmurs of advisors and officers discussing the future of the galaxy. The air was thick with the scent of technology, cold metal, and ozone, and the distant thrum of the Empire's vast power. At the center of it all stood Gorth, the Emperor of the Harkon Empire, a man whose ambition reached far beyond the stars themselves. Gorth was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with a muscular build that was a testament to his strength and countless years of battle. His skin was dark, the color of burnished steel, marked by deep, jagged scars from the countless wars he had fought to expand his empire. His face was sharp, almost angular, with high cheekbones and a jawline that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were a piercing blue cold and calculating, reflecting the mind of a ruthless leader. The time has come, Gorth muttered to himself, his voice deep and commanding. This subject's power will be the key to our dominance. Once we control them, no one in the galaxy will be able to stand against us. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of a small holographic display in front of him. He stood still, his arms crossed, watching the image flicker to life. The new subject appeared on the screen, a figure that was both fragile and strong. Their face, young and determined, flickered across the display. They were a symbol of everything Gorth sought to control, an object of his desire to mold into the perfect weapon. They're more than just a tool, Gorth said, his voice cold, almost a whisper. They are the future, and I will shape them into the weapon that will make us invincible. The laboratory beneath Gorth's palace was unlike any ordinary place. It was a vast, sterile chamber filled with the hum of machines, the sharp scent of chemicals, and the quiet murmur of scientists who worked tirelessly on his behalf. Here the Emperor's mad ambitions took shape in the form of twisted, inhuman experiments. The first subject is ready, a scientist said, approaching Gorth. He was holding a tablet with data on the progress of the genetic modifications to the subject's DNA. Their body is responding to the alterations faster than we expected. The results are promising. Good, Gorth said, his tone sharp. Keep pushing their limits. We need to see just how much power they can harness. The scientist hesitated before responding. Sir, there is something troubling. Some of the modifications are too unpredictable. We're seeing accelerated growth in their physical strength, but we're also seeing instability in their neural pathways. Gorth's eyes darkened as he turned to face the scientist. I don't care about instability, he growled. We're not stopping this project. If they have the potential to create an army of unstoppable warriors, we will risk everything to see it done. The scientist nodded nervously. Understood, my lord. Meanwhile, on the holographic display, the new subject's image flickered and shifted, their expression, now one of resistance, of strength. Gorth watched it with cold satisfaction. He could almost see them breaking under the pressure of his experiments. They will be perfect, Gorth murmured to himself. The galaxy will kneel before their power. His plan was simple: control. The subject's power create an army of genetically enhanced soldiers, and use that army to crush anyone who dared stand against him. With them under his command, nothing would be beyond his reach. But as the days passed and the experiments continued, the scientists began to notice something unsettling. The subject's resistance was growing stronger, not weaker. Their body was adapting at an unprecedented rate, and with each new modification, they seemed to gain more control over the changes being made to them. Gorath's frustration grew with each passing day. He had underestimated the subject's strength, and now they were no longer a mere subject to be controlled. They were a force of nature, and Gorath could feel the danger of letting them slip from his grasp. "Prepare for Phase 3, Gorath commanded, his voice cold and unwavering. "We will not stop until they are ours. And once they are, the galaxy will be ours to command." The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that filled the small cabin. Kaya sat across from Arden, her arms crossed, staring out the viewport. The stars stretched out before them, endless and vast, and yet in that moment she felt the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her. Arden glanced over at her, his brow furrowed slightly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, as though he knew there was something more going on beneath her calm exterior. Kaya didn't immediately respond. She had become more thoughtful over the past few days, her mind constantly whirling with thoughts of her newfound powers and the responsibility that came with them. She turned to look at Arden, noting the way his eyes always seemed to be searching for answers, for something he couldn't quite grasp. "I'm just thinking," she said softly, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty, "about everything that's happening, about what I'm supposed to do with all of this." Arden paused for a moment, then leaned back in his seat, folding his arms. "I get that. It's a lot to take in, but we'll figure it out. You're not alone in this." Kaya felt a warmth spread through her at his words, but she didn't show it. She had grown to trust Arden more than she had anyone in a long time, but there was still a part of her that hesitated to fully open up. She had seen too much in her life to believe that anyone could truly understand her. "I don't know how to control it," Kaya confessed, her gaze shifting away. "This power, these changes, I feel like I'm losing myself in it." Arden watched her closely, his voice gentle. "You're not losing yourself. You're just finding a new part of you. It's not easy, but you've got it in you to handle it." Kaya looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "You really think so?" she asked quietly. Arden nodded, his expression softening. "I know so. You're stronger than you think, Kaya, and you don't have to face this alone." For a moment there was a quiet between them, a shared understanding that didn't need words. Kaya could feel the sincerity in his words, and it stirred something within her. She had always been alone, fighting battles on her own, but now with Arden she felt a glimmer of something more, something she had never allowed herself to feel. "I appreciate you being here," Kaya said, her voice softer now. "It means more than you know." Arden smiled slightly, though he didn't fully understand the depth of her words. "I'm just doing what's right, and I'm not going anywhere." Over the following days their bond grew. Kaya began to realize that her strength wasn't just for herself, it was something that could protect others, protect humanity from the forces that sought to control and destroy. Her mind, once clouded with doubt and fear, was starting to clear, and she was learning to accept the power within her. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars pass by, Kaya found herself looking at Arden differently. There was something in the way he spoke to her, the way he cared for her well-being, that made her feel something. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something important, something that made her heart beat faster whenever he was near. But Arden didn't seem to notice. He was still the same, the steadfast protector, the reliable ally. He wasn't looking at her the way she was looking at him. For now, Kaya knew it was enough just to have him by her side. "We'll get through this," Arden said quietly one night after a long silence. "We'll make sure they don't win." Kaya smiled slightly, her heart warmed by his words. "I know, and I'll make sure of it too." The battle was inevitable. After months of preparation, Arden, Kaya, and Zira stood in the heart of the war room, aboard their ship, the Starfire, ready to face the storm that was about to hit. Their small yet fierce rebellion had grown into a powerful force, and now it was time to strike back. "Are we ready?" Arden asked, his voice calm, but carrying an underlying tension. His eyes scanned the map on the holographic display, his mind already planning the next move. Zira, standing beside him, nodded. "The forces are in position. Our fleet is prepared to engage. All we need is the signal. Kaya, who had been silent up until that moment, stepped forward. Her expression was serious, her eyes burning with determination. We know what we're up against. Gorath is ruthless, and his army is vast, but we can't back down now. The galaxy depends on us. She's right, Arden said, turning to face her. We've come this far. We can't afford to fail now. Zira activated the communication system, and the faces of their allies appeared on the screen. Rebel leaders from various sectors of the galaxy, all united in the fight against Gorath's tyranny. We are ready to move forward, Zira said, addressing them all. The attack begins now. The room went silent as the tension rose. The galaxy was about to erupt into chaos, and there was no turning back. Kaya took a deep breath, stepping closer to Arden. Do you think we'll make it? She asked, her voice quieter than before. Arden looked at her, his expression softening. We have to. For everyone. They didn't have much time. The countdown to the attack had begun, and as they prepared for battle, they knew that everything depended on the next few hours. The outcome would shape the future of the galaxy. As the rebel fleet moved toward Gorath's stronghold, Kaya felt the weight of the decision she had made. This was no longer just about survival. It was about taking a stand against the oppressive forces that sought to control everything. The battle began in a blaze of gunfire and explosions. Ships from both sides clashed in the dark expanse of space, and the sounds of laser fire filled the void. We need to break through their defenses, Arden shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Focus on their capital ships. Zira's voice crackled over the comms. On it. We're diverting firepower to their fleet's flank. It should give us an opening. Kaya, standing next to Arden, clenched her fists. She could feel the energy within her building, the power that had been growing stronger ever since she had learned to control it. I'm going in, she said, determination in her voice. I'll take down their shields. Arden turned to her, concern in his eyes. Be careful, Kaya. We can't afford to lose you. Kaya nodded, a small but reassuring smile crossing her face. I'll be fine. With that, she activated her powers, and her body was surrounded by a glowing aura. She could feel the energy coursing through her, the intensity of it almost overwhelming. She focused, and with a concentrated blast, she sent a surge of power into the enemy shields. The shields faltered, then shattered, and the rebel ships took their chance, launching a full-scale attack. The tides of battle began to turn. As the fighting raged on, the trio pushed forward, battling their way through the chaos. They knew that even if they won this battle, the war was far from over. Gorath would not give up easily. This is just the beginning, Kaya said, her voice determined, as she fought alongside Arden and Zira. We're not stopping until he's gone. Arden gave her a quick nod, his focus never wavering. Together we'll end this. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the ship's engines. Arden, Kaya, and Zira stood together in the small command room, the gravity of the situation pressing down on them. After the battle with Gorath's forces, they had managed to escape, but the cost of victory had been high. The war was far from over. Kaya's mind raced, the realization hitting her like a wave. There was something deep inside her, something she had only begun to understand. It was more than just the power she had learned to control. It was a part of her, something that had been hidden for a long time. Kaya, Zira said, her voice breaking the silence. We need to talk. Kaya turned to face her, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What is it, Zira? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. There's something you don't know. Zira began, her gaze steady. Something that even you haven't fully realized yet. Arden stepped forward, his brow furrowing. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Zira took a deep breath, then looked directly at Kaya. Kaya, you're not just some alien. You're the descendant of an ancient race, a race whose genetic makeup is capable of creating the next step in human evolution. You carry within you a genetic key, one that could either save humanity or destroy it. Kaya recoiled slightly, her eyes widening in disbelief. What do you mean? How is that even possible? You've felt it, haven't you? Zira continued, her voice soft but firm. The changes within you, the power that's growing stronger. It's not just your own. It's a genetic legacy passed down from a time when your ancestors were part of an ancient race, one that seeded humanity's evolution with their own blood. Kaya shook her head, struggling to understand. So, you're saying I'm the key to the future of humanity? Yes, Zira said, her expression serious. The genetic material you carry has the potential to accelerate human evolution, to enhance physical and mental capabilities beyond what anyone could imagine. But it's also dangerous. It can be used for good, or it can be twisted into something horrific. Kaya took a step back, her mind spinning. I don't understand. Why me? Why now? Arden placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her some comfort. It's not your fault, Kaya, he said softly. You didn't ask for this, but now we have to make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Kaya looked at him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zira stepped forward, her expression resolute. We stop Gorath. We have to. He wants to use you for his own gain, but if we can take him down, we can ensure that your power is used for the right reasons. Kaya nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. I won't let him use me. Not like that. Arden gave her an approving smile, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. You're stronger than you think, he said, his voice filled with admiration. We'll fight this together. As they stood there, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them, Kaya realized that she was no longer just a victim in this war. She was a key player, and her destiny was tied to the fate of humanity. Let's end this, Kaya said, determination burning in her eyes. Once and for all. The ship hummed quietly as it glided through the dark expanse of space. Kaya stood by the viewport, gazing out at the stars, her mind focused on the battle ahead. The weight of her newfound role as a leader was heavy, but it was a burden she had come to accept. She had come a long way since the days when she was just a girl running from her past. Back then, all she had wanted was to survive. Now she was fighting not only for her survival, but for the survival of every oppressed being in the galaxy. Kaya, Arden's voice called from behind her. She turned to see him approaching, his expression serious but warm. It's time. Kaya nodded slowly, her heart racing. I know. I'm ready. You've come a long way, Arden said, his voice full of pride. I know you're ready. We all believe in you. Kaya smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed the storm of thoughts raging within her. She had always been unsure of herself, hesitant to trust her own abilities. But over the course of their struggle, she had found strength in the people around her, in their belief that she could make a difference. It's not just about strength, is it? Kaya asked, her voice thoughtful. It's about trust and belief, in myself and in all of you. Arden's gaze softened. Exactly. And you've proven that you can lead us. Kaya turned back to the viewport, her expression more focused now. I know what I have to do, she said, her voice steady. We'll strike at Gorath's forces. We'll take down the heart of his empire and end this once and for all. You're ready. Zira's voice came from the doorway. She stepped inside, her expression calm but resolute. We've prepared everything. The fleet is in position. The galaxy is watching us, Kaya. Kaya turned to face Zira, nodding slowly. I won't let them down. The moment was heavy, charged with the realization of what was at stake. Kaya had once been a girl uncertain of her future, overwhelmed by the forces against her. Now she was a leader, a beacon of hope for those who had none. And the burden of that role was not something she could carry alone. We fight for the future, Kaya said, her voice full of resolve. For all those who have been silenced, for every life that has been taken. We fight to make sure that no one else suffers as we have. Let's make sure we do it right. Arden said, his voice steady and firm. We'll do this together, Kaya. We're with you. The final preparation was swift. The Starfire and the Allied ships moved toward Gorath's stronghold, a shadow of impending destruction. Kaya stood at the helm, her hands steady on the controls, her thoughts focused on the mission ahead. But even in the face of battle, she couldn't ignore the quiet strength growing within her. This is it, Kaya said, her voice calm but filled with a fierce determination. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Zira stood beside her, looking out at the approaching enemy. We fight for what's right, she said quietly. We fight for the future of the galaxy. Kaya turned to her, a look of resolve in her eyes. Let's finish this. The engines roared as the fleet engaged, and Kaya felt the power of her leadership surge through her. She was no longer just a bystander in the war, she was a leader, a symbol of resistance, and the key to humanity's survival. The future of the galaxy was in her hands. The battlefield was nothing like what they had imagined. The air was thick with smoke, the ground scorched by the fires of war. Explosions lit up the horizon as ships collided in the skies above, and the sounds of combat echoed across the land. This was the culmination of everything they had fought for, a battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. Kaya stood at the forefront, her hand gripping the weapon that had become her symbol of strength. The battle raged around her, but her focus remained sharp. She was no longer the unsure girl who had fled her past. She was a warrior, a leader. Arden fought beside her, his movements precise, his focus unwavering. The two of them had become a force to be reckoned with, working together in perfect harmony. The bond between them was stronger than ever, and it was in moments like these that they truly understood what they were fighting for. "This is it," Kaya said, her voice calm, but filled with determination. "We can't stop now." "Uh, we won't," Arden replied, his voice low and firm. "We've come too far to back down." The battle surged forward, each blow they struck against Gorath's forces, pushing them closer to victory. But as the fighting continued, something unexpected happened. The very people who had once been the victims of Gorath's experiments, the ones who had been used as mere tools in his quest for power, began to rise up. "They're fighting back," Zira said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The test subjects, they're fighting for us." Kaya's eyes widened as she watched the former test subjects turn against Gorath's army. These were people who had once been nothing but tools subjected to horrible experiments, their bodies and minds altered beyond recognition. But now they were fighting for their freedom, their revenge. "They're finally free," Kaya whispered, a sense of awe and relief washing over her. "They've been given a voice." Arden nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. "This changes everything. They won't stop until Gorath is defeated." The battle raged on, but with the test subjects now joining the fight, Gorath's forces began to falter. His carefully constructed empire, built on the suffering of others, was crumbling before their eyes. Gorath's voice crackled over the comms, filled with rage. "You think you've won? You're nothing but pawns in this game. I will crush you all." "You've lost, Gorath," Kaya said, her voice steady and firm. "The galaxy will no longer bow to you." Gorath's face twisted in fury as he saw his forces faltering. "No, this cannot be," he screamed. "I will not be defeated by you." But it was too late. The rebellion had reached its peak, and Gorath's empire was crumbling. As the final blow struck, Gorath's flagship was torn apart, and his reign was over. The galaxy had won. In the aftermath of the battle, the Galactic Peace Force arrived. They had been notified by Kaya and Arden, who had sent a distress signal once they realized that Gorath's reign could no longer be tolerated. The peacekeepers descended on the battlefield, swiftly arresting Gorath and his remaining officers. "You are under arrest for illegal genetic experiments and crimes against the galaxy," one of the peacekeepers said, restraining Gorath as he struggled. Gorath screamed in fury, but his words were lost in the chaos around him. His empire was no more, and his plans for domination had come to an end. The aftermath was a mix of exhaustion and triumph. The galaxy was free, but the cost of that freedom had been high. Kaya stood in the midst of the battlefield, looking at the faces of her allies, those who had fought alongside her. They had lost so much, but they had gained even more, a future. "It's over," Arden said, standing beside her. His voice was filled with relief, but there was also a sense of sorrow in his eyes. "We've won." Kaya nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Yes, but this is just the beginning." The aftermath of the battle was quiet. The dust of war had settled, and the galaxy was finally at peace, or so it seemed. But Kaya and Arden both knew that this peace was fragile, and the future remained uncertain. They stood together on the balcony of the newly rebuilt command center, gazing out at the stars. The shipyards below were busy with ships being repaired and refueled, but their minds were elsewhere. "I never imagined this would be the outcome," Kaya said, her voice low, almost reflective. "I thought it would be over after Gorath, but now I realize it's just the beginning." "Yeah," Arden replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The fight for freedom doesn't end with one victory. It's a long road, and we're just starting to walk it." Kaya turned to face him, her eyes meeting his. "Do you ever think about what comes next? What we'll do after all of this?" Arden looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I think about it all the time, but I'm not sure what the future holds. All I know is that I don't want to stop fighting." Kaya smiled softly. "I don't think I could either." She took a deep breath, her mind still racing with all that had happened. We've come this far. We can't stop now. There was a long pause between them. The weight of the battle, the victory, and the future they were about to build hung in the air. Neither of them knew what the next chapter would hold, but they knew they would face it together. Arden, Kaya began, but her voice faltered as she realized just how much had changed. She had always been hesitant to acknowledge her feelings, but now standing beside him, the words came more easily. I'm not just fighting for the galaxy for the oppressed. I'm fighting for us, too. Arden's eyes softened, and he took a step closer to her. I know. I feel the same way. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as he finally allowed himself to speak what had been building inside him for so long. I've always been focused on the fight on the mission. But you're different. You mean more to me than anything else. Kaya looked up at him, her heart pounding. The emotions she had kept buried for so long were finally coming to the surface. I never thought I'd find someone like you. Someone I could trust. Someone who cares. Arden reached out gently, taking her hand in his. We've been through so much together. I think we found something more than just a cause. We found each other. Kaya felt a warmth spread through her at his words. She had been afraid to open her heart, afraid of what it might cost her. But now with him, she felt as though she had found a home, a place where she was no longer alone. We can do this, she said, her voice full of conviction. Together. Arden smiled, the weight of the past battles lifting from his shoulders. Yes, together. We've come this far, and there's no turning back. The stars above them seemed to glow brighter as the future unfolded before them. The battle had been won, but the true fight had only just begun. A new era was dawning, and Kaya and Arden would lead the charge. This is just the beginning, Kaya whispered, her gaze steady and unwavering. We fight for freedom, for peace, for the future. And we'll fight until the very end, Arden said, his hand still holding hers. No matter what it takes. As they stood together side by side, the weight of their shared journey hung between them. They had fought for a better future, and now they would build it. The galaxy was theirs to shape, and together they would bring about the change they had always dreamed of. The war was over, but the battle for the future was just beginning. Kaya and Arden stood together, looking out over the vast expanse of space. The galaxy, once torn apart by conflict, now held the promise of peace. But peace was not something that would be given. It was something they would have to fight for each and every day. We've done it, Kaya said, her voice full of quiet triumph. But we can't stop here. There's so much more to do. Arden turned to her, his eyes soft with affection. We won't stop, he said. We'll fight for a future where everyone is free, where everyone has a voice. Kaya nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars. Together we can build that future. It's a long road, but it's one worth walking. As they stood there side by side, they knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the strength of the galaxy's oppressed now standing with them. The revolution had begun, but it was only the first step. The future is ours, Kaya whispered, a determined smile crossing her face. And it's only just begun.